Hello folks, I'm Alex, this is Alex Unabridged, and this is my ranking for the 20 Stephen King novels I've read so far. So welcome back to the channel if that is the case. Yes, the novels of Mr. Stephen King then today, the 20 that I have read so far. I've had this list, this ranking on my mind for quite a while actually, and I've been pushed into doing this, or inspired, spurred into doing this, because my good buddy Troy, Mr. Troy Tradup, released his top 10 Stephen King novels list the other day, and so I thought, right, it's probably about time to do this then. So I returned to this list and had a look over it. And I have to say, one thing that I noticed in this list is that there's quite a lot that I've read that I don't have hugely strong memory of. I remember whether I, liked something, loved something, really didn't like something, and there are plenty that I have really strong memories of. But there are quite a few that I certainly ones that I read, 20 years ago, that are somewhat sketchy in detail. Another thing that I thought when I was doing this list, 20 is quite a lot for one author, for me personally, to have read of one author's work. But when you look at the list of Stephen King's novels alone, we're looking at, 3, I think, something like that, 63, 64. And so, yeah, I haven't actually, read a huge proportion of his work to date. I have read more short story collections and some of his non-fiction as well. So my total of Stephen King, works in general, is topping 30. But yeah, in terms of novels, and that's what this list is, it's just the novels. Yeah, I'm only about a third of the way through, if that. So yeah, I'm going to treat this list as a baseline for where I am now. And then when I've gone through this, I will talk a little bit about how I plan to remedy the huge gaps in my Stephen King reading. As I say, these are all the novels, no novellas, short story collections, non-fiction works, things like that. I have included the couple of Bachman books in this list though, because they are novels, and although they're written under the pseudonym, they're written by the same guy, so they're in this list. So I'm going to rattle through these 20 relatively quickly, otherwise we'll be here all day. And then I will talk about, as I say, going forwards and how I catch up on my Stephen King. So in number 20 then is Insomnia. This follows, it's the story of a guy with insomnia, and the insomnia allows him to perceive strange auras and hallucinations and sort of the darkness that comes with being able to see these hidden things. I must have read this when I was in my early 20s, so I don't have a huge amount of detailed memory of it. I just remember not liking it. It probably was sort of around the sort of 6th or 7th King, I think, that I read, something like that. And yeah, I remember quite a lot of it. I remember being quite dull. I don't remember being particularly engaged with it. It may well be that part of that is the fact that I had no frame of reference for a lot of the stuff that's come in from, or references, links to the Dark Tower stuff. Which I still haven't read, by the way, Dark Tower, but I do know a little bit about it. So it could be that was a reason why I didn't like it, but I think I will only know on a reread on that one. But for now, I remember not liking it a lot. In at number 19 then is Eyes of the Dragon. This is a fantasy of King's, sort of dark magic and struggle for power, I think between two royal brothers. Again, not a huge amount of detailed memory of the plot, things like that. I just remember, again, not liking it, not taking to it at all. I would have read this around about the same time as Insomnia, I think. And yeah, it wasn't what I looked for in a Stephen King novel. I was not a big fantasy reader, still not. And yeah, it wasn't for me at all. I did finish it, but it wasn't for me. In at number 18 is End of Watch, the third in the Bill Hodges trilogy. I love Bill Hodges and Holly Gibney particularly. Holly is my favourite Stephen King character. I enjoyed the other two books in the trilogy, and I've reread the whole trilogy 3 times, I think, or I've read it 3 times, 2 rereads. And each time I've reread it, I've disliked End of Watch more and more. It's one where I just kind of go, oh, Stephen, you can't help yourself, can you? He's gone away from the crime thriller, the more grounded crime thriller stuff in the other two, and gone into the supernatural and paranormal, which normally wouldn't bother me at all with Stephen King because I like that. But it doesn't work in that for me. It becomes too absurd, too unbelievable. It's just for me it just doesn't work. Okay, in at number 17 then, one that I think quite a few people would disagree with in terms of where it is in my ranking. Misery. I can appreciate the quality of this one. I can appreciate why people like it so much. Annie Wilkes is a great character, very, very well written character, and it's a well written book. But for whatever reason, I cannot get on with Misery. I first read this when I was in my late teens, and I tried rereading it again last December to see if my opinion had changed, and it hasn't, I'm afraid. It's just not one, as I say, I can't even put my finger really on it why I don't like it, but I just do not get on with it at all. It's just not one for me. In at number 16 is another one that, again, I think is, a lot of people are a big fan of. 11/22/63. In principle, I really loved the concept of this. I bought this on day one, started reading it, really excited, new Stephen King. Yeah, really liked the concept of it, the time travel stuff, the, trying to stop the assassination of JFK, the questions of just because you potentially can, should you, that kind of thing. But in reality, it just didn't work for me. Again, it was more that's not what I wanted from King. The slice of life stuff in the 1960s, I do like the slice of life stuff from King. I do like that kind of grounded stuff, but it was the romance, it was the love story in this, and it just was too much of the focus for me. I found myself just getting quite bored with it, I think, and didn't particularly like the ending of that one either. So yeah, just not one that I took to at all. I really don't like it. In at number 15 then is this one, The Regulators. This is set in a suburb of Wentworth, Ohio, where the suburb falls prey to an ancient evil. An ancient otherworldly being essentially traps the residents in that suburb and causes chaos and lots of death. This is the mirror book to Desperation, published under King's name, which I haven't read. So yeah, this is one that I really don't have a huge amount of detailed memory for. I remember it was a good time. I remember enjoying it. But other than that, it's a little bit hazy in my memory. So that one would definitely benefit from a reread, and I'd like to do that, at the same time as Desperation and see the mirroring of it. Okay, in at number 14 is Firestarter, about a young girl who has got pyrokinetic powers, and who is on the run from shadowy government figures who want to, get hold of her to use her powers for their own nefarious means. This is another one I remember enjoying it quite a bit, but I don't have a huge amount of detailed memory of the plot, things like that. I just remember having a good time with it. It was a good fun time. So yeah, Firestarter is 14. In at number 13 then is Fairy Tale. This is a book of two halves for me. I loved the first part of it, which is very much slice of life, great character work, great sort of, friendship, blossoming friendship between a younger character and a kind of grumpy old man and his dog, Radar. I really enjoyed that bit of it a lot. Really enjoyed that. Unfortunately, the second half, the half where we go into the fairy tale world through a portal, no, not so much. That did not work for me. It overstayed its welcome. A lot of that. It's just wasn't anywhere near as engaging or anywhere near as sort of kind of good quality in terms of its plotting, I think, as the first part. So fairy tale. I still enjoyed it overall, but I think the first half is vastly superior to the second. In at number 12 is the other of the Barkman books, and that's Thinner. And this is about a guy who is cursed, causes an accident, causes a death through an accident, a road accident, I think, and is cursed by the family of the person he killed. And the curse is that he will continue to get thinner and thinner and thinner, and no matter how much he eats. This one I picked up in a 2-for-1 sale, I think, and was pleasantly surprised by it. It's quite a simple plot. It's quite a straightforward plot, but I really enjoyed it. It's kind of, you know, it's about him kind of finding out, you know, what this curse is, how to lift the curse, and his own kind of reckoning in terms of, you know, coming to terms with what he actually did, taking kind of ownership, taking responsibility. That was an audiobook and a thoroughly enjoyable surprise, that one. Okay, in at number 11 is Finders Keepers, the second in the Bill Hodges trilogy. This one, good crime thriller. Interesting characters, more Bill and Holly. I'm always up for that. Didn't like it quite so much in terms of its plot as Mr. Mercedes. It felt very different. I was a little bit kind of thrown by it and maybe a bit disappointed by it on my first read of it. But as I say, I've read this whole trilogy another 2 times since, and that one has gone up in my estimation every time I've read it. Finders Keepers at number 11. In at number 10 is Mr. Mercedes. I really like the introduction here of Holly and Bill Hodges. I really like the general crime plot. I really enjoyed the plot. It was very fast paced. It was tense, kept me on the edge of my seat, and had a decent ending, that kind of thing. Generally good character work, particularly when it comes to Brady Hartsfield. I think he's one of the most detestable, despicable human villains. Absolutely horrible piece of work. The thing that keeps this at number 10 and not higher up on my list, because I do really like the book in general a lot, the thing that keeps it at number 10 is Stephen King's problematic writing of the character of Jerome. Yeah, it's absolutely just, it jars, and I say when I've reread this, it's jarred more and more and more. In at number 9 is Doctor Sleep, the kind of follow-up to The Shining. I was quite apprehensive going into this because The Shining, as you'll see later on, is, you know, it's one that's really up there for me. And I was a little kind of wary of going back to something that was, you know, Shining connected, because we're going back to follow Danny as an adult. But I thought this was like really involving. I really enjoyed the links back to The Shining, but also the new stuff that comes into it, new characters that come into it, how Danny has, you know, kind of grown up, or what he's kind of become as an adult, the problems that he's had, the difficulties he's trying to overcome, and the new threat I thought was quite creepy as well. It was, yeah, there was a definite tension there for me. Okay, in at number 8 then is Carrie. I remember really liking this a lot when I first read it. But this would have been like 20 years ago. I remember being really, it was probably one of the first things that kind of, you know, used a variety of different sort of ways to tell the story, different voices to tell the story, and just the relatability I think of this. Yeah, really powerful book, really entertaining book, quick read, pacey, incredibly engaging, and I am actually really looking forward to rereading this, especially in this beautiful edition. Okie dokes. Number 7 is the most recent new King that I read, and that's Holly. And this goes in here because it's another Holly Gibney story. And it is a good one. I really enjoyed this. Again, back to the crime thriller, the straight crime thriller, with some pretty horrible villains in it. Horrible, but also darkly comic in the way that they are written, their speech, things like that, their relationship, the way they bounce off each other. Yeah, really enjoyed that side of it. Love Holly, learning more about Holly, so I'm always happy there. But also, I really enjoyed the some of the stuff with Barbara Robinson, and an old poet that Barbara is kind of meeting with to improve her poetry. She has a talent for poetry, and the sections between, I think, is it her name Olivia? I think perhaps the old poet. Um, Between her and Barbara, I really enjoyed the kind of the talks about art, creating art, and the role of the artist, and they were funny, they were insightful, philosophical, and also quite melancholy in some ways. They were really beautifully done. I really liked those sections. So yes, Holly at number 7. Number 6, more Holly Gibney, with The Outsider. Dark, opens extremely darkly, with a pretty nasty, a brutal murder of a child. And but it's the concept as well of what's the darkness, the kind of the horror element to this. But I'm really quite chilled by the idea of either people not being who they say they are or appear to be, but also the idea of there being something or someone who can appear in someone else's form and then, commit unspeakable acts, and, the fallout from that. That as a concept scares me. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the Holly Gibney stuff, but Holly doesn't come into it for a good bit. It's like probably nearly halfway through, I think, before Holly actually appears in this. But I really enjoyed the kind of little ensemble essentially that forms to try and solve what's going on in this town. It's really good ensemble work again. And yeah, some really creepy stuff in that. Really creepy stuff. So yeah, The Outsider, number 6. Number 5 then, Pet Sematary in at number 5. I think the book that so far has scared me the most, for sure, from King. Absolutely terrified me when I read that when I was about 17, 18. Gave me nasty nightmares. There's only a couple of Kings that have really given me any kind of nightmares, but Pet Sematary was one that stuck with me and did cause me some pretty nasty nightmares. And I've read it again in the last few years, and it still scares the hell out of me. But it scares me in a slightly different way now because I understand the central theme of grief more as an adult. I think you do, and so yeah, that's that makes it even all the more disturbing. And while Stephen King can be a little bit with endings, Pet Sematary is one where absolutely nails it. That ending will always stick with me for sure. That is quite a chilling ending. So yeah, Pet Sematary in at number 5. In at number 4 then we've got The Stand, that big old chonker of a book. I've only ever read the completely uncut version. I've never read the original version. But and I've had it on audiobook, and that I didn't read that until like 2-3 years ago, something like that. I kept putting it off because it was quite a time commitment. But I finally took the plunge and loved it. Absolutely loved it. Great character work in this. Got some fantastic characters in it, and another one of my favourites, which is Nick Andros, I think. But just the scale of it, the epic scale of it, is just phenomenal. And it never once lost my attention throughout that huge sprawling story. So The Stand comes in at number 4. Number 3 then is Salem's Lot. Stephen King does vampires. um, this is going to sound possibly a little bit weird, but Salem's Lot is my Stephen King comfort book. If I want a blast of King, a good quick blast of King, although it's not the shortest book, but it feels shorter to me for some reason. If I want a good quick blast of King, and something that needs to, if it's something that I just don't want to have to concentrate on new stuff, if it's what I want something that is familiar, then I go for Salem's Lot. I love the way that he writes the town of Jerusalem's Lot, the community there, again, character work, but just the feel of it, the way that he captures that atmosphere. It's got some really good, tense and spine tingling kind of stuff in it. And yeah, it's just one that I return to. I've returned to that, several times when I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, just fancy a quick blast Stephen King. But yeah, a weird comfort book, I know, but that's what it is to me. Okay, in at number 2 then is The Shining, the first Stephen King I ever read, and so therefore it will always be dear to me because of that. But I really enjoy the slow burn of this. Like, certainly the beginning sections of it is quite a slow burn, but when it gets into the real horror, it properly ramps up. I find it's like the last part of it is really just like I fly through it. And it still has some of my absolute favourite scenes in it of any horror book. Things that still scare me, again, still give me goosebumps even thinking about them. Topiary animals and the playground is what I'll say for anybody who's read it. That's even worse than what's in room 217 for me. So yeah, absolutely adore The Shining. And as I say, it's very close to my heart because it was my first King. It's what got me into King's work. Okay, in at number 1 then, probably no surprise to anybody, it's It. Another massive chonker. It's another one where the concept scares me. The idea of this thing that will appear to people in a different form depending on what you are scared of, you personally are scared of. That in itself scares the hell out of me. What would I see? Well, I have an idea and I don't like it. There's that side of it. There's the Losers Club, which I absolutely adore. This group of misfit kids who form these really strong friendships. I think a big thing with It to me, apart from all the fantastic sort of supernatural horror type stuff to do with it, Pennywise, or whatever form it is taking, is the level of cruelty of some of the human characters. That actually the more disturbing stuff for me doesn't come from that kind of monstery horror, for want of a better word. It comes from the fact that there are so many despicable humans and the sort of horrendous cruelty and cruel acts that they perpetrate on other people. I think that's something that King does brilliantly in a lot of his books. It's always the human characters who are actually really, when you think about it, the more scary ones. And yeah, that's where it really kind of that's where I find it the most sort of disturbing, I think, some of that stuff. So yeah, I have so many fantastic memories of that. It's one which invaded my kind of my general reality when I read it. It stuck with me outside. When I put it down, it didn't go away. And it hasn't. It's one of those where it's kind of indelibly written some of those scenes on my brain, especially in terms of the visuals of them that I get from them. I will not watch the movies because I think I'd be way too scared. But I absolutely love the book. Absolutely love it. So there we go. That's the 20 that I've read so far, ranked for now as a baseline. But doing this is made me kind of go, yeah, you really need to get back to King. Because I do love his stuff in general that I've read. And it's, I've just, been off discovering new authors and new genres and stuff, especially in the last few years. And I need to get back to King and make some progress on getting through his entire back catalogue. I ought to say, tried a few others that I have DNF'd. So in the past, I have tried the Tommyknockers, The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, Dreamcatcher, and Cell. All of those were DNFs because I didn't get on with them at the time when I read them. But those are quite a while ago. Cell was when it came out in 2006. So what's the plan then? I'm going to embark on a somewhat ambitious project, but I'm going to do it absolutely not to any kind of schedule. This is for me and me alone. It's not going to be a monthly. It's not going to be even every other month. It'll be as and when I can do this, because this is a big project. And in case you hadn't already guessed, I am going to start back at the beginning again with Carrie, seeing as I have this and I want to read this beautiful edition. I'm going to start right back at the beginning again, and I am going to go through in order of publication. So even if I read one per month, it'd take me 5 years to cover them all. So there is no rush on this. This is just for me, but I want to try and get through all of the novels, at the very least, that Stephen King has written and continues to write. But yes, I'm going to start with Carrie, and I'm going to start in December with Carrie. For if it goes ahead, remember December, that will be something that I'll take part in. If not, I'll just read it anyway. So there are a couple of exceptions to things. I'm not going to read Rage, which was one of the Barkman books, obviously published in 1976. It's no longer in print. King doesn't like it even existing now, I think. And it's very difficult to get hold of. I would be spending a lot of money to get hold of it, and I'm just kind of going to say no. I'm not that bothered about it, so I will leave that one out. I may not read everything that I've reread multiple times, and certainly things that I've read very recently to when I get to them on the list. I may well skip those again if I remember them clearly enough. Because one of the things that I want to do by doing this is look at all the connection between the books, especially when it comes to the stuff that crosses into the Dark Tower and the general kind of Stephen King sort of multiverse, that kind of thing, the things that run through his books. And I think I can do that better if I go through in order. Plus, there's so many of them out there. I kind of get choice paralysis when I think, I might fancy a Stephen King, and then I can't decide on which one to go for. And often I'll just end up rereading something rather than reading something new. So if I give myself some structure and say, no, you're going to go back to the beginning and you're going to read or reread them in order, then I think that'll help with kind of doing this. But as I say, there is no schedule for this. This is all just, as and when I feel like it. Potentially every couple of months or so, but it's going to take me years and years to get through these. But that's fine. There's 50 years worth of King to get through. So I've got plenty to be digging into there. And we'll see how I go. And when I've read one, I will do a little chat on it. Most of these will be audiobooks as well, because I've found that audio is the way to go for me with King. So as long as the narrator's okay, I'll go on the audio. So that will do from me today, folks. Thank you very much for watching. As always, do drop your thoughts in the comments below. Would your ranking of the Stephen King books I've mentioned be similar or vastly different? Do let me know that, and do let me know, some of your favourites that I haven't read yet. What can I look forward to in this big old list of Stephen King novels I've yet to read? I'll be back on Tuesday with a little tag video, so I do hope you'll join me for that then. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.